An Arab millionaire pretended to have a serious illness to test his relatives. He wanted to know who truly loved him and who would stay by his side when he was sick and defenseless. And in the end, he discovered something absolutely unbelievable. Ibrahim Hassan was 72 years old and worth $800 million from his real estate empire across America. But despite all his wealth, he felt completely alone in his Beverly Hills mansion. His wife Layla seemed more interested in shopping than spending time with him. His children Omar, Amira, and Khalil only contacted him when they needed money for their expensive lifestyles. The loneliness was crushing him from the inside. Sitting alone in his Beverly Hills mansion one quiet Tuesday morning, Ibrahim stared at old family photos scattered across his mahogany desk. The loneliness hit Ibrahim like a punch to the chest. Here he was, surrounded by luxury but feeling completely isolated from the people who should matter most. He had given his family everything they could ever want, but had they ever given him genuine love in return? The doubt was eating him alive, and he knew he had to find out the truth before it was too late. That afternoon, Ibrahim made two very important phone calls. First, he called his longtime friend and personal physician, Dr. Samuel Peterson. Second, he contacted his trusted family attorney, Marcus Thompson. Both men had worked with Ibrahim for over 20 years and knew him better than anyone. When Ibrahim explained his plan over dinner at a quiet steakhouse downtown, both men were initially shocked. "I want to fake having a terminal illness," Ibrahim said quietly, leaning across the table. "I need to see who will stand by me when I can no longer write checks or sign business deals. I need to know who loves Ibrahim the man, not Ibrahim the millionaire." Dr. Peterson and attorney Thompson exchanged worried glances, but after hearing Ibrahim's reasoning, they reluctantly agreed to help their old friend discover the truth about his family. The plan was set in motion the very next morning. Attorney Marcus Thompson immediately transferred $400 million into a secret offshore account, ensuring that if anyone tried to take advantage of Ibrahim's supposed condition, they would not get their hands on everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Peterson prepared fake medical reports showing advanced pancreatic cancer with only 4 to 5 months to live. The documents looked completely authentic, complete with hospital letterheads and medical terminology that would fool anyone. Ibrahim began his performance that Wednesday evening. He started coughing violently during dinner, clutching his chest and claiming he felt dizzy. His wife Layla rushed to his side, genuinely concerned as she helped him to their bedroom. The next morning, Ibrahim refused breakfast and stayed in bed, complaining of severe stomach pain and nausea. By the weekend, he had convinced everyone that something was seriously wrong. The family gathered in the living room as Dr. Peterson delivered the devastating news. Ibrahim sat weakly in his favorite leather chair, wrapped in a blanket, while his wife and 3 children listened in stunned silence. The doctor's face was grave as he explained the test results and the grim prognosis. The room felt like all the air had been sucked out of it when he finished speaking. "I am truly sorry to tell you this, but Ibrahim has advanced pancreatic cancer," Dr. Peterson announced solemnly. "The disease has progressed beyond treatment options. We are looking at approximately 4 to 5 months, maybe 6 if we are extremely fortunate." Layla gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Omar dropped his coffee cup, sending it crashing to the marble floor. Amira began crying immediately, while Khalil stared in disbelief. The first week was exactly what Ibrahim had hoped to see from his family. Everyone rallied around him with genuine care and concern. Layla prepared his favorite meals and sat by his bedside for hours. Omar canceled important business meetings to spend time with his father. Amira put her art career on hold to help care for him. Even Khalil came home from his latest vacation early to be with the family during this difficult time. But by the second week, cracks began to appear in their caring facade. Ibrahim noticed the subtle changes from his bedroom window as he pretended to sleep. Layla started spending more time on her phone, texting someone and smiling in ways she had not smiled at Ibrahim in years. She would leave the house for hours, claiming she needed fresh air to cope with the stress. When she returned, she smelled like expensive cologne that was definitely not Ibrahim's brand. Omar's visits became shorter and more focused on business matters rather than family time. He would sit beside his father's bed with legal documents and financial reports, discussing company decisions that needed immediate attention. The conversations always ended with Omar suggesting that Ibrahim should sign over more responsibilities to him while he still could. The hunger in his son's eyes was unmistakable, and it broke Ibrahim's heart to see it so clearly. Amira's artistic nature took a dark turn as she began treating her father's illness like inspiration for her next gallery showing. She would sketch him while he pretended to sleep, taking photos of him in his weakened state. She even mentioned to her mother that she was planning a series called Death and Beauty, based on watching her father's decline. The coldness of using his suffering for her art career was beyond heartless. Khalil simply disappeared again. After the initial shock wore off, he announced that he could not handle watching his father deteriorate and needed to travel to Europe to clear his head. Before leaving, he asked Ibrahim to increase his monthly allowance, since the stress was causing him to spend more money than usual. The request was so selfish that Ibrahim had to bite his tongue to keep from breaking character. The person who surprised Ibrahim most was someone who was not even family. Maria Santos, their longtime housekeeper, began staying late every evening without being asked. She would quietly clean Ibrahim's room, prepare special soups that were easy to digest, and even read to him from Arabic poetry books she had borrowed from the library. Her kindness was genuine and came from the heart, not from any expectation of financial reward. By the third week, Ibrahim witnessed betrayals that cut deeper than any physical illness ever could. He overheard Layla on the phone with her sister, discussing how to redecorate the mansion once Ibrahim was gone. She had already contacted an interior designer and was planning to convert his study into a yoga studio. The woman he had loved for 35 years was already planning his replacement before he was even dead. Omar held a secret meeting with the company board members, trying to convince them that he should be named permanent CEO immediately, rather than waiting for his father to pass away. He argued that Ibrahim was no longer mentally competent to make business decisions and that the company needed strong leadership during this transition. Several longtime employees who had been loyal to Ibrahim for decades were quietly pushed out and replaced with Omar's friends. The financial betrayals were even more shocking than the emotional ones. Ibrahim discovered that Khalil had been forging his signature on checks, stealing over $200,000 from various family accounts. When confronted by attorney Marcus Thompson, Khalil claimed the money was for medical treatments he wanted to research in Switzerland. The lie was so elaborate that it would have been impressive if it were not so devastating. Amira sold several of Ibrahim's prized possessions without permission, including a rare Persian carpet that had belonged to his grandfather and a collection of antique Arabic manuscripts. She claimed she needed the money to pay for a gallery space where she could display her Death and Beauty series. When Ibrahim's assistant questioned the sales, Amira coldly replied that dead people do not need material possessions. But the most painful betrayal came when Ibrahim overheard a conversation between his wife and children in the kitchen. They were discussing his funeral arrangements and arguing about who would inherit what. Layla wanted to sell the Beverly Hills mansion and move to Paris. Omar wanted to expand the business internationally. The three of them were literally dividing up his life while he was still breathing, treating him like he was already a corpse. The fourth week brought Ibrahim to his breaking point. Layla had brought her boyfriend to their home, introducing him as a grief counselor who was helping her cope with the stress of caring for a dying husband. The man was obviously younger, probably in his 30s, and the way he looked at Layla made Ibrahim sick to his stomach. They were not even trying to hide their affair anymore, holding hands right in front of him. Omar had completely taken over the family business and was making decisions that went against everything Ibrahim had built over 5 decades. He was selling off profitable properties to invest in risky cryptocurrency ventures and high-end nightclubs that had no connection to their established real estate empire. Watching his life's work being destroyed by his own son was more painful than any terminal illness could ever be. The house that had once been filled with love and laughter now felt like a tomb. The staff walked around on eggshells, whispering in corners about the family drama they were witnessing. Several longtime employees had quit rather than watch the Hassan family destroy itself from within. Even the gardener, who had maintained their grounds for 15 years, gave his notice because the atmosphere had become too toxic. Ibrahim realized that his test had revealed the most heartbreaking truth imaginable. The people he had spent his entire life providing for, protecting, and loving did not actually love him back. They loved his money, his status, his connections, and his ability to solve their problems. But Ibrahim the man, Ibrahim the father, Ibrahim the husband, was apparently worthless to them once he could no longer be their personal bank account. That Thursday night, as Ibrahim lay in bed listening to his wife laugh with her boyfriend downstairs, he made a decision that would change everything. He called attorney Marcus Thompson and Dr. Samuel Peterson for an emergency meeting the next morning. It was time to end this charade, but not in the way his family expected. Ibrahim Hassan was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. Friday morning brought the most dramatic plot twist imaginable. Ibrahim had asked Maria Santos, the loyal housekeeper, to help him with a special project. Together, they quietly packed his most important belongings and loaded them into Maria's car, while the rest of the family was still asleep. Ibrahim left a note on his nightstand that would be discovered later, but for now, he was disappearing without a trace. The note was simple, but devastating. "I have gone away to spend my final days in peace. Do not look for me. I want to die with dignity, surrounded by people who truly care about me. You will hear from attorney Marcus Thompson when the time comes." Ibrahim and Maria drove to a small apartment complex in downtown Los Angeles, where Ibrahim had secretly rented a modest 2-bedroom unit under an assumed name. For the first time in months, Ibrahim dropped his act completely. He stood up straight, stopped coughing, and smiled genuinely as he looked around the simple apartment. Maria was confused but happy to see her employer looking so much healthier. Ibrahim explained that he was not actually dying, that it had all been a test to see who in his family truly loved him versus who was just waiting for him to die so they could inherit his fortune. Maria Santos was shocked but not entirely surprised. She had always been observant and had noticed things that did not add up about Ibrahim's supposed illness. His breathing was too steady when he thought no one was watching. His appetite was too good when he thought no one would see him eating. Most importantly, his eyes never looked like those of a man who had accepted his own death. Meanwhile, back at the Beverly Hills mansion, chaos erupted when Layla discovered Ibrahim's note. She immediately called Omar, who rushed over with Amira and Khalil. The four of them stood in Ibrahim's empty bedroom, reading and rereading the note as if the words might change. Their first emotion was not grief or concern for Ibrahim's well-being, but panic about what this meant for their financial future. The family's true priorities became crystal clear in their response to Ibrahim's disappearance. Instead of organizing search parties or contacting hospitals, they immediately called attorney Marcus Thompson demanding to know about Ibrahim's will and financial arrangements. When Marcus refused to discuss any details until Ibrahim was actually deceased, Omar threatened to sue him for withholding information from the family. Layla's boyfriend quickly disappeared once he realized the money train might be derailed. Within 24 hours of Ibrahim's disappearance, the younger man had blocked Layla's phone number and moved out of the hotel room she had been paying for. His love for her had been just as fake as her family's love for Ibrahim. The irony was so perfect that Ibrahim would have laughed if it were not so tragic. Omar's business decisions became even more reckless as he tried to quickly convert company assets into personal wealth before Ibrahim's potential death could complicate the inheritance process. He sold 3 profitable hotels at below-market prices and invested the money in his personal accounts. His greed was so obvious that several business partners began questioning whether they wanted to continue working with the Hassan family. Amira's art career took another disturbing turn as she began painting portraits of her missing father, marketing them as the Ghost series, and selling them to collectors who were fascinated by the morbid story. She was literally profiting from her father's disappearance and supposed terminal illness. The gallery owners loved the dramatic backstory and were pushing her to create more pieces about death and abandonment. Khalil returned from Europe when he heard about his father's disappearance, but only because he was worried about his monthly allowance being cut off. His first question was not about Ibrahim's health or whereabouts, but about whether the family credit cards would still work. When Layla told him they probably needed to reduce expenses, Khalil had a complete meltdown and accused everyone of being selfish. Meanwhile, Ibrahim was experiencing something he had not felt in decades: genuine human connection. Maria Santos had introduced him to her extended family, a tight-knit group of Mexican-American relatives who welcomed him with open arms despite his wealth and status. They did not care about his business empire or his bank accounts. They cared about Ibrahim the person, sharing meals and stories and treating him like beloved family. Maria's mother, Elena Santos, was particularly kind to Ibrahim. The 70-year-old woman would cook traditional Mexican dishes and tell him stories about her late husband, who had also been a successful businessman. She understood the loneliness that came with success and the pain of wondering whether people loved you for yourself or your achievements. Her wisdom and warmth reminded Ibrahim of his own mother, who had passed away 20 years earlier. The Santos family lived in a modest neighborhood where neighbors actually knew each other's names and helped each other through difficult times. Ibrahim watched children playing in the streets while their parents sat on porches, talking and laughing together. It was a completely different world from Beverly Hills, where people lived behind gates and rarely spoke to each other, despite being incredibly wealthy. For 3 weeks, Ibrahim lived this simple life and felt more peace than he had experienced in years. He helped Maria's nephew with his math homework, played chess with Elena's brother, and even learned to cook traditional Mexican rice from scratch. These people had very little money compared to his family, but they were rich in ways that mattered more than financial wealth. But Ibrahim knew this peaceful interlude could not last forever. He had a responsibility to return and deal with the consequences of his test. More importantly, he wanted to see how far his family would go in their betrayal. Through attorney Marcus Thompson, Ibrahim had been monitoring their activities, and what he discovered was about to fuel the most dramatic confrontation of his entire life. The breaking point came when Ibrahim learned that Omar had begun selling off pieces of the family's real estate empire without any legal authority to do so. Using forged documents and bribing certain officials, Omar had managed to sell 2 apartment buildings and a shopping center, pocketing over $50 million for himself. This was not just greed anymore. This was criminal fraud that could destroy the Hassan family name forever. Layla had moved her boyfriend back into the mansion and was throwing lavish parties while her husband was supposedly dying alone somewhere. She told people that she was celebrating Ibrahim's life and memory, but the parties were really about showing off her newfound freedom. She had even contacted a divorce attorney, planning to file papers the moment Ibrahim's death was officially confirmed. Amira's art exhibition opened to huge crowds, with wealthy collectors paying enormous prices for paintings inspired by her father's suffering. The gallery opening was covered by local news stations, with Amira giving interviews about how her father's terminal illness had inspired her greatest work. She was literally building her career on the foundation of his supposed death, which was perhaps the most disturbing betrayal of all. Attorney Marcus Thompson called Ibrahim with urgent news that changed everything. Omar had scheduled a meeting with the company board for the following Monday, planning to have Ibrahim declared legally incompetent so he could take full control of the business empire. If successful, Omar would own everything, and Ibrahim would have no legal recourse. The test had gone too far, and it was time to end this charade before irreparable damage was done. That Sunday evening, Ibrahim made final preparations for his return. He had attorney Marcus Thompson prepare legal documents that would shock his family to their core. Dr. Samuel Peterson prepared medical records that would prove Ibrahim's perfect health. Most importantly, Ibrahim prepared himself emotionally for the confrontation that would either save his family or destroy it completely. There was no middle ground left. Monday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane hitting the Beverly Hills mansion. Ibrahim walked through the front door at exactly 9 o'clock, looking healthier and stronger than he had in months. The housekeeper who answered the door screamed so loudly that everyone in the house came running. Layla dropped her coffee cup, shattering it across the marble floor. Omar's face went completely white as he stared at his father like he was seeing a ghost. "Hello, family," Ibrahim said calmly, his voice strong and clear. "I hope you have all been taking good care of my home and my business while I was away." The silence that followed was so intense that you could have heard a pin drop. Amira started crying, but not tears of joy. These were tears of panic, as she realized her father was very much alive and had probably seen her art exhibition celebrating his death. Ibrahim walked slowly through his mansion, observing all the changes that had been made in his absence. His study had been converted into a yoga studio, just as he had overheard Layla planning. His personal office had been stripped of family photos and replaced with Omar's business awards and certificates. Even his bedroom had been redecorated to remove any trace of his presence. They had erased him from his own home. The family gathered in the living room, nobody knowing what to say or how to explain their actions. Ibrahim sat in his favorite chair and looked at each of them with eyes that seemed to see right through their souls. Attorney Marcus Thompson and Dr. Samuel Peterson arrived within minutes, carrying briefcases full of documents that would expose the truth about everything that had happened during the past 2 months. "I suppose you are all wondering how a man with terminal cancer can suddenly appear healthy and strong," Ibrahim said quietly. "The answer is simple. I was never sick. I was never dying. This was all a test to see who among you truly loved me versus who was simply waiting for me to die so you could inherit my wealth." The truth hit them like a physical blow, and one by one, their faces crumbled as they realized the magnitude of their betrayal. The confessions and confrontations that followed were more brutal than any soap opera ever written. Layla broke down completely, admitting to her affair and begging for forgiveness while simultaneously trying to justify her actions. Omar attempted to deny the financial fraud until attorney Marcus Thompson presented bank records and forged documents with Omar's signature. The evidence was overwhelming and legally damning. Amira's art career crumbled instantly when Ibrahim announced he would be suing the gallery for profiting from fraudulent claims about his death. The paintings she had sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars would have to be returned, along with damage payments for emotional distress. Her Death and Beauty series became a very expensive lesson about exploiting family tragedy for personal gain. Khalil, who had been stealing money through forged checks, found himself facing potential criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. The $200,000 he had stolen would have to be repaid immediately, along with interest and penalties. His European vacation funded by stolen money suddenly seemed like the most expensive trip of his life. But the most dramatic moment came when Ibrahim announced his final decision about his fortune and his family. Standing in the center of the living room where they had all gathered for so many happy occasions over the years, Ibrahim delivered a speech that would change their lives forever. His voice was steady, but his heart was breaking as he spoke the words he never thought he would have to say. "I have decided to donate my entire fortune to charity," Ibrahim announced. "Every hotel, every building, every investment, every dollar will go to organizations that help families in need. You have all shown me that you do not love me. You love my money. So I am removing money from the equation permanently. If you want a relationship with me now, it will have to be based on genuine love, not financial expectation." The aftermath of Ibrahim's revelation was swift and decisive. Omar was arrested for fraud and faced potential prison time for his illegal business activities. Layla filed for divorce, but received nothing in the settlement since all assets were being donated to charity. Amira's art career never recovered from the scandal, and she was forced to return to her job as a part-time art teacher. Khalil moved back in with his mother and had to get his first real job at age 28. But there was one beautiful surprise waiting for Ibrahim. Maria Santos and her family had shown him more genuine love and care during his 3 weeks away than his own family had shown him in years. When Ibrahim offered to adopt Maria as his daughter and make the Santos family his legal heirs, they initially refused, insisting they had helped him because they cared about him, not because they wanted anything in return. Eventually, Maria accepted Ibrahim's proposal, and he legally adopted her as his daughter. The Santos family became the Hassan family, and Ibrahim's massive fortune would eventually go to people who had proven their love through actions, not words. Ibrahim moved out of his Beverly Hills mansion and into a comfortable home in Maria's neighborhood, where he spent his remaining years surrounded by genuine love and laughter. The test had revealed the painful truth about his biological family, but it also led Ibrahim to discover his real family among people who loved him unconditionally. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. Ibrahim Hassan learned that the most valuable inheritance you can leave behind is not money or property, but the knowledge that you are genuinely loved by people who truly knew your heart. This incredible story shows us that money can buy many things, but it cannot buy genuine love or loyalty. Ibrahim's test revealed the difference between people who love you for who you are versus people who love you for what you can give them. In the end, he found his real family among strangers who cared about his happiness more than his bank account. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones who betray us deepest, while complete strangers become the family we never knew we needed. The next time someone shows you unconditional love and support, remember Ibrahim's story and cherish those relationships. True wealth is measured by the people who would stand by you, even if you lost everything tomorrow. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments if you think Ibrahim made the right choice. Subscribe for more incredible stories that will make you think about what really matters in life.